Good afternoon, and welcome to Embracing Diversity 2021. My name is Michelle Cook, and I serve as Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion and Strategic University Initiatives here at the University of Georgia. Today, we come together, although virtually, as a campus to affirm our community commitment to diversity and inclusion at UGA. We are strengthened daily by the different experiences, backgrounds, cultures, and perspectives that we each contribute to the intellectual and educational enterprise here at the University of Georgia. Embracing Diversity is an annual program that is held during the fall to celebrate the diversity that is the University of Georgia. It is also a reminder that we all should support the multitude of diversity and inclusion activities, programs, lectures, panels, and performances that will take place throughout the academic year. It is important that we take this time out of our normal schedules to pause, to recognize and appreciate the richness of our diversity. We should all be proud of our diverse community of students, faculty, staff, and our own contribution to that diversity and to building a more inclusive and welcoming UGA. There are people across our campuses and offices and units, both large and small, who have engaged daily in the work of ensuring that our community is inclusive and welcoming for all. The University of Georgia defines diversity broadly, recognizing that everyone is a contributor to and a beneficiary of diversity. As indicated by your participation today, your support is invaluable to the success of inclusive excellence at the University of Georgia. It is now my privilege to welcome to the podium a major architect of inclusion and community on our campus, whose support and commitment has been the foundation of all of our success in making this campus a truly inclusive space. President Jerry Moorhead. President Moorhead.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the University of Georgia, I'd like to welcome each of you virtually to the 2021 Embracing Diversity program. Let me begin by expressing my sincere thanks to Dr. Michelle Cook and her outstanding staff for all that they do to promote a positive and welcoming campus environment. Each of us here today has an important role to play in promoting a culture at UGA that is welcoming, inclusive, and diverse. Since we last held this event at our institution, our state, our nation, and our world have all experienced significant challenges. However, during these challenging times, our commitment to diversity and our commitment to inclusion has never wavered. In July of 2020, I announced the establishment of two key groups that would shape our work toward a more diverse and inclusive campus. The Presidential Task Force on Race, Ethnicity, and Community developed concrete recommendations to foster a more welcoming and inclusive campus culture and learning environment. One of the first proposals made by this group was to fund a position that would increase the capacity of our Certificate of Diversity and Inclusion and provide diversity education throughout our colleges and departments on campus. Earlier this month, we held a dedication for the NPHC markers that were also recommended by the task force, and it was truly an amazing time to see so many of our alumni return to campus and celebrate such an important moment in our institution's history. That task force also helped establish the award that will be presented today, honoring esteemed retired UGA faculty member Dawn Bennett-Alexander's many contributions to diversity and inclusion. The Dawn D. Bennett-Alexander Inclusive Community Award will recognize another outstanding faculty member who has made considerable and lasting contributions to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within and beyond the classrooms at the University of Georgia. I'm pleased that we will be recognizing Dr. Paige Carmichael with the inaugural Dawn D. Bennett-Alexander Inclusive Community Award. Paige, you have been a staunch advocate for students, faculty, and staff, and for diversity on this campus. And we appreciate your continued commitment to the core values of our institution. The other committee that was established in the summer of 2020 was the Planning Committee on Diversity and Inclusive Excellence. And that committee has published a comprehensive plan with specific goals and measures for success. It builds on our previous diversity plan, which was developed during my time as provost of the institution. This new plan will chart our course for diversity and inclusion in the years to come. Departments and colleges across campus are now developing unit-level plans based on the goals that the committee has established. In the meantime, I've directed several university administrators to begin implementing immediate institutional actions that will launch our progress on this initiative throughout the current academic year. This includes the expansion of some key programs such as Road Dogs, Georgia Days, and the Georgia Commitment Scholarship Program that has already established over 600 new need-based endowed scholarships. I'm pleased that our collective work continues to bring us national recognition by publications like Insight into Diversity, which has for 8 consecutive years awarded the University of Georgia its Higher Education Excellence in Diversity HEED Award. This distinction recognizes colleges and universities that demonstrate an outstanding commitment to diversity and inclusion. The innovation and collaboration of faculty, staff, and students across this entire campus has been instrumental in the strides that we have taken toward inclusivity and diversity. And I'd like to just take a moment to congratulate all of the students who are receiving scholarships today, as well as those who made these scholarships possible. I also want to recognize those of you who have earned your diversity and inclusion certificate. Each of you have committed numerous hours to complete this program, and I want to congratulate you on your certificate this afternoon. As I close, let me again express my gratitude for what you do for this institution and to thank you for your continued efforts to move this university forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marcus Dexter. I'm Assistant Director of Student Initiatives for the Office of Institutional Diversity. I'm here to present the Black Alumni Scholarship recipients. The Black Alumni Scholarship was established to provide funding to first-year students who have exhibited dedication to racial equity through previous experience, initiative, and creativity in improving race relations in their community. This scholarship is renewable for up to 3 years, provided the students maintain a cumulative 3.0 GPA. This year's scholarships were awarded to Joshua James and Naila Kadeh. Joshua James is a first-year student majoring in biology from Hampton, Georgia. In 2020, he and 2 classmates created Project 19, a nonprofit community service project aimed at raising funds for the Atlanta COVID Relief Fund, the United Food Force Fund in McDonough, Georgia, and the Atlanta Black Lives Matter Support Fund. Project 19 succeeded in raising over $1,100 for this effort. Joshua's nominators for the Black Alumni Scholarship had this to say about him. Joshua is a high achiever who displays outstanding strength of character and maturity. He is a well-rounded, well-respected, and astute young man who undoubtedly will continue to make enormous contributions to his environment. Joshua has a commitment to excellence in public service. He thinks of others, is a team player, and is a go-to kind of person. Please join me in congratulating Joshua James. Next up, Naila Kadeh. Naila came to UGA from Bethlehem, Georgia, but is originally from Haiti and migrated to the United States at the age of 13. She is currently a first-year student majoring in business administration, specializing in accounting. Naila is an incredibly driven and mature young woman. Her nominators had this to say about her. Naila's gumption and kindness is inspiring. I am proud of her vision and values, guiding her to continue forward despite any potential setbacks. Naila is ready to take on any new challenge and has the self-motivation to succeed. She, an outlook of inspiring and inspiration to others to do the same thing through collaboration and encouragement, and is the kind of future leader we need. Please join me in congratulating Naila Kadeh. Next, we will recognize those who have been selected as recipients of the Diversity Scholarship by UGA's Director of Athletics, Josh Brooks.
Good afternoon. The Diversity Scholarship was established by the UGA Athletic Association to attract exceptional students to our university community. The scholarship serves as a need-based award to support students who have demonstrated leadership in community service and extracurricular and/or other activities. This year's scholarships were awarded to Jordan Dozier and Natalia Sanchez. Jordan Dozier, a first-year student from Union City, Georgia, majoring in political science, having overcome great obstacles, Jordan is a young man of high caliber and inner strength. His nominators had this to say about him. Quite frankly, Mr. Dozier is one of the best individuals I have ever been around in my life. He is simply one of those students who teach you as much about life in the face of overwhelming adversity as you help them learn about the subtleties and vagaries of literature. I always make the comment to Jordan to never change the man that he already is, and deep down, I know he will remain the amazing individual that he is. Please join me in congratulating Jordan Dozier. Natalia Sanchez. Natalia Sanchez is a first-year mathematics major who came to UGA from Covington, Georgia. Natalia is also bilingual and has utilized her language skills to found a free tutoring service called Amigos Unidos, which aids her Hispanic and English as a second language community. Natalia's nominators had this to say about her. Natalia is compassionate and intelligent. She has identified herself as a leader in that she listens to others, speaks up for what is right, and is willing to work. Natalia is well respected among her peers and trainers. She demonstrates humble courage that will take her far. Natalia was a pleasure to have in class, and her positive attitude and belief in herself, even in the face of difficulty, were immensely admirable qualities. Please join me in congratulating Natalia Sanchez. Next up, we will have the introduction of our keynote speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Litzy Hernandez, and I'm a junior studying exercise and sports science. I have the honor of introducing the keynote speaker for Embracing Diversity this year, Dr. Don D. Bennett-Alexander. I'm particularly excited for this opportunity because I was recently named as one of the recipients of the Building Bridges Scholarship, funded by a generous donation from Dr. Bennett-Alexander. And I'm incredibly thankful for her ongoing commitment to the success of students at the University of Georgia. Dr. Don D. Bennett-Alexander is a recently retired tenured associate professor of employment law and legal studies at the University of Georgia's Terry College of Business. She studied at the Howard University School of Law and Federal City College, now the University of District Columbia, and is licensed to practice law in Washington, D.C. and 6 federal jurisdictions. Throughout her career, Dr. Bennett-Alexander has focused her research and advocacy on diversity and employment law with particular emphasis on race, gender, and sexual orientation issues. She has authored and co-authored multiple texts on the subject, as well as conducted seminars for the private sector since 1983. Dr. Bennett-Alexander has also been the recipient of over 50 awards and recognitions for this work, including the 2019 Minority Services and Programs Honored Trailblazer recognition, the 2017 Award for UGA's Best Diversity and Inclusion Program, the 2016 Women's Studies Professor of the Year Award, and in 2015, she was the recipient of one of only 10 national 25,000 Elizabeth Herlock Beckman Awards for excellence in teaching. Dr. Bennett-Alexander used her award to establish an endowed scholarship at the University of Georgia for students who engage in diversity work to build bridges of understanding. Most recently, Dr. Bennett-Alexander was honored through the creation of a new faculty award named after her to recognize UGA faculty who have made considerable contributions to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within and beyond the classroom at the University of Georgia. Dr. Bennett-Alexander dedicates all she does to her ancestors, her daughters, and her 2 grandchildren. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Don D. Bennett-Alexander.
You can't imagine how hard this is for somebody who for 70 years has hated on January 2nd to have happy birthday sung to her. This is a hard one. I also had not connected when you came up to introduce yourself to me outside that you were one of my awardees, my scholarship winners. Is that awesome or what? No, y'all, we have been dealing with COVID for the past 2 years almost. And I have done virtually every variation on the theme, from teaching to holding classes across the country. But this is weird. I've never done this version before where I'm here and you're not. I'm usually sitting at my kitchen table. And I didn't know, like, we're not supposed to clap when somebody says, could you please join me in doing whatever? Like, can't we clap if we're here? Because we appreciate it too, right? Okay, thank you. As was just stated by Litzy, I dedicate all that I do to my ancestors who were enslaved in Alabama and North Carolina. And after that, they were sharecroppers in North Carolina until my grandparents moved to Virginia and then my parents moved to DC. That is huge for me because of what they did and what they went through, I am able to stand here and not just stand here, but to stand here and feel comfortable in standing here, feeling like I belong here. One of my biggest things is don't let anyone tell you what your narrative is, because society will try to do it and they don't tend to know who we are if we are outside what they consider to be the norm. So we are living these wonderful, awesome lives that we can make out of whatever it is that we've gotten as leftovers. And they still have their stereotypes about us that make it so we have to live up to their standards, or really it's usually down to their standards. That's why I do the work that I do. I also dedicate it to my daughters and my grandchildren who are right over here. That is so awesome. Sorry you can't get to see them, you who are doing this virtually. But I do it because Marianne Williamson, the wonderful writer about love, says that when you care about your children, when you love your children, you want the world to feel the same way about them that you do. I was blessed and tremendously privileged to have 3 daughters. And I knew how incredibly wonderful they were. They are intelligent, bright. This isn't just mother talk. They are intelligent, bright, passionate, imaginative, caring, loving. They are intrepid. They will not take no for an answer when they know there's something that needs to be done. Why wouldn't I want the world to see that and see them as a human being instead of seeing them and dismissing them because they were Black or female or because they had their hair in dreadlocks? So what I did was I worked to try to make the world accept them. That is part of why I dedicate everything I do to them. And every time I look at them, it makes me tear up because they are so awesome. I forgot to say they're funny as crap too. They are so awesome. And the idea that the world could see them any other way just is not okay with me as their mother. So I had to try to change the world. I have been doing that since they were born in a zillion different ways. And there are at least 1,000 things I could tell you about how and why I do that. And I had to think really hard about what I wanted to say about today because it is so difficult for me to do this. Everybody else, I don't get why everybody is like, they did this, duh, who else would they name it for? And I'm still back at, what? They did what? In fact, when President Moorhead called to tell me this, which was in and of itself out of the ordinary, I do not get phone calls from him. And I had just that day said that I would not be on a committee because it was January 12th and I was retiring on February 1st. And I thought, when I saw this email saying, you know, can we have this phone call at like 4 o'clock, and it was 4:50 when I saw this, right? I was like, was that committee that important that he's gonna call and ask me, can you please reconsider this? As it turns out, that's not what he called and told me. So when he said what he said, exactly, nothing happened. Nothing happened. So finally I heard this little voice on the phone say, are you still there? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, is it okay? And I said, is what okay? And he said, well, if we're going to do this, we have to have your permission to put your name on it. And I said, is that a trick question? And he said, no, we're both lawyers. I mean, we get it, right? So he said, no. So I said, of course you can do this. But what really struck me was not, and this is absolutely true, it wasn't that they were naming it for me. What got me was that the University of Georgia was doing this at all. I have been here for 33 years. When I first came, before I actually got here, the dean started sending me the minutes from the faculty meetings. So evidently he announced that I was coming. And I don't think he read the minutes before he gave them to me. So I'm reading along, you know, just trying to figure out the business of the faculty. And what I see is some faculty members saying, you know, lamenting the fact that they were going to lower their standards by having an affirmative action hire. My one regret is that that person was so old that he's probably still not around now to see this is what affirmative action and inclusion gets you. And if you think, and actually it's not over 50 awards, it's actually over 60, that's what including us does. And the president who hired me at the time had just come from DC that year, Chuck Knapp. And I grew up in DC. He was used to seeing Black folk do professional things. So he got here and he looked around and it was like, where are the Black folk? And he didn't tell me this until years later, but he took a lot of flack for the move that he made to be more inclusive, which then was called affirmative action. And he literally said, if you hire folks, I will give you that permanent line to keep them. I was the first hire under that program. I already had tenure where I was. And it was not, I just built the house I thought I'd be in forever. It was not comfortable to come here and to cast my lot in for tenure again with the kind of work I do with the University of Georgia and the kind of reputation that it had. But in fact, the only reason I finally came for the interview was because they were so insistent. And I thought, you know, my sister was like, do they even have like paved streets in Georgia? This is how bad Georgia was just 33 years ago, my PhD sister. But when I came, one of the things he said to me is, will you please come and help us try to move us forward? They still were using language like desegregation. This was 1988. Civil Rights Act had passed in 64. UGA had been integrated since 1961. And they were still using language from what I consider to be eons ago. He also made the mistake of asking me to do a university-wide lecture for a new lecture series, the President's Lecture Series. And I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, anything you want to. I said, anything I want to? And he said, yeah. And one of my favorite pictures is the picture of me and my family when they were young girls under the Tate Center banner that said diversity, listen without prejudice, announcing this event. When I came, that was the first time anybody had ever used that word. And it came out of my head. There was no diversity like we know it now. I just thought, this language does not make sense to me. We need to come up with something else. And diversity was what I came up with. I'm not claiming the whole diversity movement now, but that's what happened. And one of my students came in the next day and said, oh, you're famous. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I was listening to the radio on the way in and they were talking about diversity, listen without prejudice, which is a great tagline for a radio station, right? But it just sort of took off. And I had no idea what it was that I would be doing to help the university move forward. But when you live the life I have, where you have been fully embraced and accepted and valued by your family growing up, and then you go to a predominantly white institution and you see what it feels like not to have that kind of acceptance. And then 2 years later, you transfer to a Black institution and it is much more comfortable for you because people look at you as Dondi Bennett at the time, as opposed to, oh, that Black woman that wears, you know, these flowers in her afro and dances around the student center, okay? A completely different feeling. And one of the things I said to myself is, if I'm ever in the position to make sure people feel that way, I will do that. So while I didn't know what I would do when I came, I knew that I would do, and there's a slide for you that I'm gonna have them put up for you now. This is all I did. And I thought it was important to tell you not only what it was that got us to this point, but what it was that made it so my name is the thing that's on there. I don't know how well you can see that, but this was a t-shirt that I came across as I was folding t-shirts as my daughter was organizing her closet. It says, be the reason someone feels loved, seen, welcomed, heard, valued, appreciated, and respected. The first thing I did when I saw the t-shirt was I teared up. Am I lying, Jennifer? That's what I started doing. And of course she's going, Mama, it's a t-shirt. But that was my entire life. That is all we're talking about. It is the basis for every legal textbook I've written that deals with diversity issues. It is the basis for every talk I've ever given, every lecture I've done, every admonition that I've given to people about this. Y'all, this is all we're talking about. And the thing I love about this is that it's something every single person already knows how to do. Don't you love that? You know how to love people. You know how to make them feel seen and heard and valued. And for me to be able to come to a university that was willing to be open, and I don't know that anybody beats that more than President Moorhead, who is just so special to me, I can't even tell you, because he hears you, he listens to you. And if it's a good idea, he's willing to do what he can about it. He knows he does not have all the answers, but he's willing to listen to people who may have more information to him. Y'all, I was crying just at his list. And my daughter, thank you, had to bring me a tissue. Just his list of stuff, because when you come from the university where it was when I first came, to somebody who could stand up as president of that university and tell you the kind of things that they were doing now, let me tell you, that is more than a notion. That is huge. And the NPHC event is actually a really good example. I actually went to that event. It was one of the first times I've been out because of COVID, and thank you so much for making this virtual. Although I miss everybody being here. I know how special this would have been for you if it wasn't, but I'm just trying to keep us alive. But I went to that event, and and of course there were alumni from all years. And one of the things that they repeatedly said, Black students, when they came up, for those of you who don't know, since this is being live streamed, NPHC is the National Panhellenic Council, which deals with Black Greek organizations on campuses, as opposed to the white ones. And there was nothing that showed that they were here. And finally, they got markers that were dedicated 2 weeks ago Friday. But the students who kept coming up to me had all variations on the theme. There were people who just stood there with tears in their eyes. There were people who hugged me, and I'm like, will this ever end? It feels good, but like, seriously, it's COVID time. What they said was, you made us feel heard. We knew you saw us. We felt so valued when we were in your class. I wasn't pointing anybody out in class. I was just loving them the way you love people you care about. I loved all my students that way. And when you do that, it allows people to go out and take that message and create and craft the world they want to live in. The one that, as far as I'm concerned, is a part of what our taxes pay for. We are a public institution, and I take that so seriously. I take the fact that we are creating for people the things in their heads that they're going to work with forever. You know that. You've been through school. You remember what you learned in college when it was really significant. I take that really seriously, and because of it, I understand that very many of them don't come from backgrounds where they've learned how to do this for people that they do not value because they have lived in a society that has taught them not to value. And I understand years later, they will come back to me. Y'all, I have 3-ring binders full of the notes, the emails, and that doesn't include the telephone calls and the physical stuff, where people say, it's what you taught me that ended up making a difference in my life. This morning before I got out of bed, I got a text from a student I had 15 years ago who was sending me something that was so ridiculous. And this is a white student. And he said, I can't believe this. And I'm like, we got work to do. We still have work to do. That kind of impact is what you want somebody's university experience to be. It is what happens when you make people feel heard and seen and valued and appreciated in all the different ways that we can do that. Whether it's sitting with somebody in my office, somebody called up and asked me if I would talk. They were an alum, and they said, you were so wonderful to my dogs. I'm not a dog person, I'm a cat person. But they were training one of those dogs, and they said, whenever we came to visit you, which was pretty often in your office, you were always just very kind to the dog. What did that take? And that is a win-win situation. Nobody loses in that. There is no, this is a zero-sum game here. The idea of this award, encouraging people, is what is of value to me. Encouraging faculty who think they're above this. Believe me, I know, been there, done that. Okay, they think they're above this, they don't know because they're the intelligentsia. And of course, they grew up in the same society that everybody else did, and they carry the same kind of messages, and those messages show up in classes. To have an award that sort of puts the carrot and the stick approach is awesome. It was like, who thought of that? That is brilliant. I've never thought of that before in all the years that I've wanted people to join. And I'll say this and I'll sit down. When at the after the NPHC event, I happened to see the president's assistant, Alton, who is a very able assistant. And Alton said, do you know, I'll see you, next week for this event. And do you know who it is? Do you know who got this award? And I said, no. And it never occurred to me to even think about it because it's totally out of my hands. I don't have anything to do with it. And he said, oh, well, it'll be a really wonderful surprise. Well, I told you that the president called me January 12th. And this was maybe, I don't know, the 15th of October or something. In all that time, I had never thought of who this would be. And once he said it, it was like, maybe I should think about that for whatever it's worth. And the first person that came to mind was the person that it actually turned out to be. How awesome is that? Yes, I love it. So when I think about encouraging you to do this work for applying in the future, wherever you are in the spectrum, what I would say is to do the work, the real work. Love is more than a noun, it's a verb. Do the work of showing people that you care about them, that you value who they are, what they do, what they say. And we all know we can feel that when it's happening. Better yet, we can feel it when it's not happening. Okay. Everything that I have done is about doing that. And if you just use that simple rule of making everyone feel that way, I guarantee you it will pay off. And it's not just us that it pays off for. Again, we are sending people out into the world who take that message with them, just like the student who called me today, texted me today. They take that message with them, and y'all, they are creating a different world because of what we put into them. Okay. Okay, so I think I'm done. Did I go over time? That's my usual. Okay, great. All right, so I'm supposed to stand to the side now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bennett-Alexander, for those outstanding remarks. Your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the University of Georgia and beyond is an inspiration to us all, and I have the honor and privilege to call you friend. To further recognize your rich legacy in this work, we are excited to formally introduce the new Don D. Bennett-Alexander Inclusive Community Award. This award is presented to a faculty member who has made a considerable contribution to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within and beyond the classroom at the University of Georgia. We're incredibly proud to shine a brighter light on the unique ways that University of Georgia faculty utilize their teaching, research, and service to demonstrate the ways in which they seek to make the University of Georgia a more inclusive community for all. To commemorate this unique moment, we have made a contribution to the UGA Library's Book of Honor Fund in your honor. A book plate will be placed in The Truths We Hold, Kamala Harris's autobiography, as a way to recognize the historic nature of both of your professional milestones this year. This is a framed replica of the book plate, and it reads, presented in honor of Dr. Dawn D. Bennett-Alexander for her work to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the classroom and beyond. The University of Georgia Office of Institutional Diversity is pleased to honor Dr. Dawn D. Bennett-Alexander through the creation of the Dawn D. Bennett-Alexander Inclusive Community Award. In recognition of this honor, her work in the classroom, the community, and beyond, this book has been placed in The Truth We Hold by Kamala Harris.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Michelle.
It is now my pleasure to welcome Dr. Dean Lisa Nolan to the podium. Dean Nolan will introduce the inaugural recipient of the Dawn D. Bennett-Alexander Inclusive Community Award. I would also like to invite President Moorhead to join us in the presentation of the award.
Good afternoon, everyone. As the Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine, it is my pleasure to announce the recipient of the inaugural Dawn D. Bennett-Alexander Inclusive Community Award. Dr. Paige Carmichael is a professor of veterinary pathology in the University of Georgia's College of Veterinary Medicine and previously served as the college's Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. Dr. Carmichael earned her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree from Tuskegee University in 1987 and came to the university to complete her residency in 1989 and earned her doctorate in 1993. Sorry. She is a board certified veterinary anatomic pathologist with expertise in animal models of human disease, neuropathology, and ocular pathology. Dr. Carmichael has been the recipient of many university awards, including the Josiah Meigs Distinguished Teaching Professorship, the President's Fulfilling the Dream Award, and numerous teaching awards. With veterinary medicine being one of the least diverse professions in the medical field, Dr. Carmichael has taken it upon herself to increase and advocate for more diversity and inclusion. Some of the work that has stood out the most is her leadership in research regarding equity within college climates. In 2011, Paige conducted an unprecedented nationwide study of the attitudes and perceptions towards issues of diversity at all 28 U.S. veterinary colleges in collaboration with the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges. Her nominators describe her as a trailblazer for underrepresented minority students, staff, faculty, and veterinarians within our college, university, and profession. She is known as an excellent teacher, mentor, and resource whose passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion is evident in all she does and to all she meets. Her tireless efforts have no doubt promoted a more inclusive environment within the College of Veterinary Medicine, aiding in its recruitment and retention of marginalized students within their programs. Dr. Carmichael's 34 years of dedication to the university and diligent work towards building a better space for all students makes her the ideal recipient of the first annual Dawn D. Bennett-Alexander Inclusive Community Award. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Carmichael.
Good afternoon. My name is Nantali Morrow, Interim Director of Diversity and Inclusion in the Office of Institutional Diversity. We have now come to the portion of the ceremony where we recognize those who have completed the certificate in diversity and inclusion. This year, we are honoring those who have reached this milestone from both 2020 and 2021. Normally, we would read the names of each graduate and have them walk across the stage in a traditional graduation ceremony. However, due to the increased participation over the last 2 years, we currently have over 260 certificate graduates to recognize. We are extremely excited to have had such a high engagement throughout the pandemic and are offering our sincere congratulations to those who have reached this accomplishment. Rather than reading the name of each graduate, we have their names listed on a slideshow for you to view. As the names scroll, I will share a bit of information about the certificate. The Certificate in Diversity and Inclusion, or CDI, works to engage UGA faculty and staff in building capacity to contribute to and sustain a diverse and inclusive campus environment through the following 4 objectives: increasing awareness and understanding of diversity as an institutional imperative, expand access to and participation in diversity-based professional learning and development opportunities, promote interdisciplinary and interprofessional engagement of faculty and staff in institutional diversity efforts, identify and support resource sharing, collaboration, and the cultivation of strategic partnerships to enhance institutional capacity to achieve inclusive excellence. Earning the certificate requires the completion of the core course entitled Diversity at UGA Beyond the Numbers and 5 elective courses. Through the hiring of an assistant director for diversity education, we are now able to offer up to 10 different courses each semester taught by the Office of Institutional Diversity staff and campus partners from Student Affairs, the Mary Frances Early College of Education, and the Equal Opportunity Office. Interested participants can register for CDI sessions in the UGA Professional Education Portal to track their progress via their PEP transcript. All participants who have completed the certificate in diversity and inclusion can expect to receive a lapel pin to commemorate their achievement. The Office of Institutional Diversity will send the pins to departments via campus mail. Congratulations again to all of our graduates. We look forward to continuing to see the ways you apply your new knowledge of diversity, equity, and inclusion to your work at UGA and beyond.
How exciting to have such a large class of faculty and staff who have demonstrated a personal commitment to embracing diversity and inclusion at UGA. We are all stronger because of each of you. Congratulations to our student scholarship recipients, and a very special congratulations to the inaugural recipient of the Don D. Bennett-Alexander Inclusive Community Award, Dr. Paige Carmichael. Thank you for your ongoing commitment, Paige, to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to this institution. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor said, and I quote, "The dynamism of any diverse community depends not only on the diversity itself, but on promoting a sense of belonging among those who formerly would have been considered and felt themselves outsiders." Everyone in this room, as well as each of you watching via live stream, contribute to the efforts of the University of Georgia to successfully build a community where everyone belongs. I would like to thank each of you for your participation today. Your participation is a significant indication of the value that you as individual members of this community place on diversity. Again, thank you to our keynote speaker, Dr. Don B. Bennett-Alexander, President Moorhead, Dean Lisa Nolan, Athletic Director Josh Brooks, and Marcus Dexter, representing the Alumni Association. I would also like to extend a very special thank you to the staff in the Office of Institutional Diversity. This event happens because of their passion creativity, and commitment to the work of promoting diversity at the University of Georgia. This concludes the 2021 Embracing Diversity event. Thank you all very much and have a great afternoon.